Good day and welcome to lesson number 8, Preparing Research Instruments. For this lesson, we will have the following objectives. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to define research instruments, differentiate the different kinds of research instruments, and explain the use for each kind of research instrument. For objective number 1, let's define research instruments. Okay, so research instruments are tools which are used to gather data on specific topics of interest. When conducting a research, it is very important that we prepare and implement appropriate instruments or research instruments to gather the data that we need. Why is this so? Because during the preparation of the instrument, we must keep in mind two things: validity and reliability. What are validity and reliability? Well, an instrument is said to be valid when it directly answers or addresses your research questions. Now, on the other hand, reliability is when your research instrument is able to provide consistent and stable data over a period of time. Okay. So for the types of research instruments, there are 5 common kinds. We have surveys, questionnaires, experiments, observations, and interview or interview guides. Let's discuss them one by one. We begin with surveys. Now, a survey contains planned questions which are used to measure attitudes, perceptions, and opinions. It contains responses which are directly related to each specific question, and it can either be in the form of an interview or a questionnaire. When we talk about surveys, this usually is a poll. Okay, we tally the results at the end of the day. Now, there are 3 types of questions that you need or that you can use when conducting a survey. It can be a recall type of question, which asks for specific information such as years of service, age, and address. It can be a recognition type of question, one which asks the case of, or in the case of multiple choice questions, dichotomous questions, and rating scale formats, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 kinds of questions. Or we have the last type, which is the open-ended type of question. This one elicits brief explanations or impressions from the respondents. These are explanation types of questions. Okay, so moving on, we have questionnaires. So for questionnaires, as compared to the interview, a questionnaire is more quantifiable. Okay, it lists down written questions which are aimed towards getting specific information from the respondents. Now, the responses in a questionnaire are usually dichotomous and use an identification type of test. And like surveys, open-ended questions may also be used in your questionnaires. So, what are the things to remember, or what are the parts of a questionnaire? Okay, so we have 4 major parts. First is your personal information section. Second is your basic question section. Third is the main question section. And fourth is the open-ended question section. If you want to read through the specific components, you may pause the video at any time. Okay, so moving on, we also have experiments. Now, these are used mainly for scientific researches. Okay, and this is a procedure which is very specific and very systematic, and it is aimed towards making a discovery or testing a hypothesis. Okay, so since this is a scientific research instrument based on scientific research, we must implement the scientific method as well. So we start with making observations and then developing hypothesis, and then we design the experiment that will try to test the hypothesis. We conduct the experiment, we analyze the results, and then we decide whether the hypothesis is accepted or rejected based on the results that you have acquired. Okay, so the next one is observation or observations. Okay, this allows the description of a particular behavior in a naturalistic or in a laboratory setting. Okay, this type of research instrument is primarily used to cross-validate the results of other instruments, which means that this is not the main form of gathering data, but a means to validate the results from other data gathering procedures or from other research instruments. Okay, when do we use an observation? It is most useful when the answers to the research questions require the description or a description of a specific behavior of your respondents or participants. So what are the things to remember in crafting an observation guide? First, make sure that you are identifying a phenomenon in your observation. You're not just looking at random behavior. Instead, you are looking at certain behavior which are directed towards that phenomenon. Next, you decide on the type of observation that you are going to use. Third, you have to know your limitations as an observer based on the ethical considerations that you have set as a researcher. Fourth, you have to use a recording device when appropriate. And when a recording device cannot be found or used, you may always bring a piece of paper and a pen for you to record other details which cannot be recorded by a recording device or in the absence of a recording device. Next, never attempt to influence or alter the behavior of your subjects. And lastly, always observe ethics or ethical procedures when implementing an observation instrument. Next, we have an interview. Okay, so an interview is an instrument that allows the researcher to qualitatively gather data. Why is this so? The questions in an interview are not created in such a way that the answers are going to be very specific or very consistent. No. Most of the time, the responses during an interview or in an interview are lengthy and may vary across different research participants or respondents. There are a myriad. There are lots of options for possible responses to those research questions. And as such, a researcher or an interviewer must always be ready for those different kinds of responses. So what are the stages in an interview? Okay, so first is the pre-interview stage where you're going to orient and prepare the participants or the respondents and inform them of the scope of your research. Next is the warm-up stage. This is the initial part of the interview where warm-up questions are asked. And this is so because we want your respondents or your participants to feel at ease and comfortable with you as the interviewer. Third, we have the main interview stage where the main questions to your research are asked. Okay, these are questions which are directly related to your research questions. And lastly, we have your closing stage. This is when questions are asked to wind down the interview and respondents are acknowledged and thanked. These are your concluding questions, or these are your recapitulations of the questions that you have in the entire interview. So if you want more information regarding the preparation for or of research instruments, you may refer to the following references, as I believe that they are also very helpful in providing you with additional data regarding research instrument design. So, for this lesson, we have defined in research instruments, we have differentiated the different kinds of research instruments, and we also explained the use for each kind of research instrument. And that being said, I believe that concludes our lesson for today. Again, this is Sir Dardar wishing everyone a great day ahead. Class dismissed.